Kecia Reynolds is one of the newest board members that we have. She has been a Unity Truth student for over 18 years and began attending Unity of Washington, D.C. in the year 2000. Kecia says her life is guided by divine love, divine purpose, and divine order. Professionally, she is a distinguished intellectual property trial attorney, racking up top wins for telecommunications firms as a partner in the law firm Pillsbury, Winthrop, Shaw, Pittman. Kecia brings her love and light to the board and our congregation.
Good morning, Unity. I am Kecia Reynolds, one of your newest board members, and I am grateful for this opportunity to be able to talk today on Board Sunday. When I was given this opportunity to talk today, I have to admit I was a bit apprehensive. I thought, well, what on earth do I have to say? What story do I have to tell? What can I say to you that's interesting and spiritually relevant at the same time? Then I realized we all have a story to tell. In fact, that is actually our divine purpose, right? To express our story, verbally, in deeds, or with a smile and a warm presence. But the story that you are to tell and to express is not just your story. The purpose is to tell your truth with a capital T. So according to John's writing, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." The truth that Jesus spoke about is capital T truth, the real deal truth. Now, let's be honest. When it comes to telling our story, we usually don't have any problems talking about the challenges we face. Some of us are great storytellers, whether it be an audience of one like your best girlfriend or an audience of many. We have no problem describing in detail over and over and over again every teeny tiny detail of our challenge. We make the challenge our story. We all do it. We tell our story, whether it be what my boss said, what your spouse did, what your mother did, what your father didn't do. Or it could be what you didn't get or don't have, like that job, that house, that raise, that relationship. Some of us seem to take pleasure, actual pleasure, in our challenges. What we fail to realize, though, is that every story, your story, has a beginning, middle, and end. In Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. But for some reason, we just focus on Act 1. We repeat Act 1 over and over, never allowing the story to naturally evolve to Act 2. But here is some truth for you. It is in Act 2 where the shift happens. It is at that point in Act 2 when it stops being a challenge and starts moving in the other direction. So let's call Act 1 frenzy, okay? I think that's an appropriate name for her. Because you see, Act 1, it's in Act 1 where we usually find ourselves worked up into a frenzy. So now here's an example. Early one Saturday morning, this was about 8 years ago, and around 7 o'clock in the morning, I was out walking my dog. And I encountered a young woman that was having what seemed to be a panic attack right there in the middle of the sidewalk. She was pacing and crying, and as I approached, I thought, well, I have the option of doing one of two things. One, I could ignore her and continue on with my walk because, it's none of my business anyway. Or, number two, I could ask her if she needed help. So, of course, I chose option two. So I asked. After a deep breath, she said, "My taxi. I need a taxi and it hasn't come." So I couldn't help but think, oh geez, now I've stopped and involved myself in her issue. Is she gonna ask me to drive her somewhere? But before I actually had time to mentally calculate if I was up for playing taxi that morning, a guy drove up in a pickup truck, and he stopped and asked, "Do you need anything?" Again, the woman explained that her taxi was late and hadn't come. The guy in the truck asked her where she was headed, and I'm guessing he was probably also mentally calculating whether or not he was up for playing taxi that morning too. So it turns out this woman was trying to get to Connecticut Avenue in Van Ness to take the LSAT exam that morning. So for those of you who don't know, the LSAT exam is the entrance exam to law school. So the woman was now talking a little bit more coherently, and she explained to us that she had been calling the taxi company, Yellow Cab, to find out where her taxi was. And they just kept telling her, "It's on its way, lady, it's on its way." So obviously, you millennials know that this is pre-Uber, because this would never happen today. So within 30 seconds, a taxi appeared at the corner. So I said to her, "Oh, look, here's your taxi." And do you know what she said? "No, it isn't. It is a Yellow Cab. I called Yellow Cab, and that's not Yellow Cab." Can you believe it? A taxi was right there. But because she was in a frenzy, wrapped up completely in her challenge, she couldn't see the truth. I said to her, "That is your taxi." She still didn't get it though. See, frenzy is a mess. It will whip you and blind you to the truth. So I ran over and flagged down the taxi, but the taxi didn't see me, he kept going. So the guy in the truck took off behind the taxi and flagged him down and got him to come back. See, this woman failed to see that what you asked for may not come in the color, shape, or size that you ordered. But God always delivers your taxi on time to get you to your destination. So I don't know if this woman passed the LSAT or even if she's a lawyer today. But if I had to guess, I'd say she probably is. But here's what I do know for sure, that she has a story to tell about truth. That God always sets into motion all things to get you where you want to be if you truly desire it. We as truth students know that God works through people. Look at this story that I just told you as an example. God worked me. God worked that guy in the truck. God worked that taxi driver to get her to her destination on her path to her destiny. It is written that God causes all things to work together for those who love God. And that is the truth. Now, the book, The Alchemist, it's a great parable for how God works to set things in motion to get you to your greatness. In the book, the universe brought people into the shepherd boy Santiago's path to help him overcome the challenges along his way. And it was all just because he believed. I I'm sure many of you know the story from The Alchemist. The book was part of the Unity Book Club. But here are two of my favorite quotes from that book. First, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. And my second quote from that book is, no matter what he does, every person on earth plays a central role in the history of the world, and normally he doesn't know it. You have an important role in the history of this world. You matter. So get past that frenzy of Act 1 and let your story evolve to Act 2. Because in Act 2, that is the point when it stops being about the challenge and turns in the other direction. That young woman needing a taxi could have thought her story began and ended on that sidewalk having a panic attack. If she only told her story from Act 1, all we know is this: I didn't get into law school because Yellow Cab didn't show up. But you know what? That was not the end of her story. There was an Act 2, that point when the energy or frequency changed from crazy to calm, when we all realized that it was going to be okay, but not just okay, better than okay. See, it is the middle of the story where we remember the truth, that point where we remember that we are his disciples, that we know the truth, and that the truth will set us free. And I add, free to realize the victory. At one point in my life, I experienced the frenzy of Act 1. I was whipped and blinded and didn't know what I was doing. Now, this was all pre-Unity and pre-my 30s, okay? In my 20s, I really was a mess. No direction, no sense of purpose, just having what I thought was fun. Definitely all Act 1. Then one day, I literally said to myself, I need something more. But I had no idea what that something was. I stood there in my apartment, racking my brain, trying to figure out what it was that I was looking for. Sort of like when you walk into a room and you stand there racking your brain, trying to figure out, now what the heck did I come in this room for in the first place? Now, I would love to be able to tell you that as soon as I realized that I needed something, the answer just came to me. It didn't. Instead, I had a realization about what I needed to get the answer, and that was nothing. I just needed to stop overthinking everything. I needed to get out of my head, I needed to get out of the way, and I needed to stand still. Now, remember the psalm, "Be still and know that I am God." I had to be still so that I could remember who I was. For me, being still was especially hard. See, I have my grandmother's genes. Now, she was a phenomenal woman, zealous about life and into everything. And she never slept. Well, at least that's what I thought for many years. The first time I saw my grandmother sleep was when I was a sophomore in college and she was battling cancer. Before that day, never, ever had I seen her eyes closed except to pray. I can attest to you that finding the stillness can be a challenge. But when you remember that the answers come in the stillness, you have an incentive to be still. For me, it was just that. I had to literally stop moving. Then once I was able to still my body, I was able to still my mind long enough to get clarity. And I found God in the stillness. God was within all the time. I just had to remember that. See, I was born knowing, and you were born knowing. We all know from the genesis of life that God is there. I'm talking about innate knowledge of the truth, that is with us even before we enter this world. You don't have to learn this truth. We just have to be reminded of it. Think about how our stories would take on new energy if we decided to tell the story from Act 2 instead of from Act 1. You know, like some of those Quentin Tarantino movies where he starts the movie from the middle at the point where everything is starting to turn in the other direction. Remember Django Unchained finding himself in the forest? That wasn't the beginning of the story, that was the middle. Act 2 is commonly overlooked in the story, probably because Act 2 just isn't as salacious as Act 1. But let's agree today to let go of the salaciousness. Stop replaying the frenzy of Act 1. Okay, yes, you are allowed to talk briefly about the frenzy. But the key here is brevity. Our objective is to spend as little time as possible on Act 1. Get the lesson and move on. Get to the good stuff of Acts 2 and 3. Be still and remember the truth, and that in the end, it's all good, because it's all God. And if it isn't all good right now, then rest assured that you have not yet experienced Act 3, the final act of your story, because in Act 3, there is victory. Jesus said, "I have told you these things so that in me you have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Again, my friends, this is the truth. You will have challenges. We all do. And you can talk about it for, let's say, about 3.9 seconds. And that's it. Then, as Jesus said, take heart, because it is already overcome. You have the victory. Now, naming Act 3 victory may be a bit misleading to some. So let me clarify. I'm not saying that you'll always win, because you won't. And if you do, then that means you're playing small. Haven't taken any risks, haven't fought any good fights. Simply put, you are not living to your full potential. We have to express, and we are here to express, fully and live our best lives full out, as Reverend Sylvia says. It's not a win that we seek, it's victory. Whether you are victorious is all in how you see it. It's your perspective. Do you see good or God in all things? Can you count it all joy? Remember that God is in all things, and if that's so, then victory is in all things. When we choose to look at the challenge, we can choose to look at it through different lenses. We can look at it through a microscope. We can look at it through a zoom lens. We can look at it through a wide-angled lens. So a microscope gives us the ability to examine the smallest details of the smallest things. Many of you may not know this, but I was a biologist before I became a lawyer, and I examined cells under the microscope to study cell behaviors. Trust me on this. Examining your challenge with the microscope may not be the best thing. It's a little scary and intimidating. Because, see, your entire field of view will be the details of the challenge, just as the entire field of view for me in that lab consisted of just cells and the structures within those cells. I don't recommend a microscopic perspective, okay? As some of you weekend photographers know, a zoom lens gives us the ability to focus on things in the distance by using magnification. So now, think about it. Do you really want to magnify your challenge? I don't think the zoom lens is what we want. When telling our story, we need to tell it from a perspective of a wide-angled lens. We need to see the whole picture, from Act 1 to Act 3. The victory you see in the wide-angle lens may be the victory for that night or that moment. That one night when you're able to find peace, or that one moment when you feel joy. And keep in mind that victory may not show up in the color, shape, or size that you ordered, just like that taxi wasn't yellow. So, my goddaughter, Rowan, who is just 2 years old, has spent almost half of her life at Children's Hospital. And at 2 years old, she has taught me a great deal about how to see God, the good in everything. Of course, victory for her would be to no longer be on a feeding tube and to not have her shunt and to be running around with her twin sister and her older brothers. But let me tell you something. Rowan knows the truth. She is better than okay. And she tells her story starting from Act 3, from her victory. She expresses her story with her laughter, which is just pure joy to my ears. So how do we get there to pure joy? To see with the wide-angled lens? Well, Sean just told you. You get there through higher consciousness. You must raise your consciousness, be on the right frequency, on that right channel, to be able to recognize and see the truth. Knowing and believing that in truth you are set free. In the truth you have victory. So the next time someone comes up to you and asks you, what's the tea? You can start your story at least Act 2 and say to them, and then I remembered that I am his disciple, and that is the truth with a capital T. Blessings and namaste.